But think about it. In 48 months, our administration achieved the lowest unemployment, the highest household incomes, the most energy production, the most pro-American trade deals, and the most secure border and strongest military in the history of the world. In our first 3 years, before 2020 arrived, we had rebuilt our military, revived our economy, created more than 7 million good-paying jobs through less taxes and less regulations. Because of our administration and American innovation, we became a net exporter of energy for the first time in 70 years. We held China accountable for years of trade abuses and brought jobs back to the USA. And in the face of the worst pandemic in 100 years, we launched the greatest national mobilization since World War II. We reinvented testing. We created medical supplies and medicines at a record pace. And the day we left office, we were vaccinating 1 million Americans a day. So despite a disappointing loss at the national level, we still gained 10 million more votes in 2020 than 4 years before, and the highest vote total of any Republican ticket in history. We also added 15 seats in the House of Representatives. With the great leadership of leader Kevin McCarthy. And I couldn't be more proud to report that we also won the highest proportion of African American and Hispanic votes in 60 years. Now, the progress in broadening our movement over the last 4 years was not caused by evolution of our ideas or the compromise of our principles, but really by putting our principles into practice and hewing to our roots at the very core of the Republican Party. I mean, we basically turned back to what made America great in the past, and we made America great again in just 4 years. That's the record. But how times have changed. In just 155 days, the Biden-Harris administration has unleashed a tidal wave of left-wing policies that threaten to wipe out all the progress that we made for a safer, more prosperous, more secure America. You know, Democrats have been so busy advancing their liberal agenda, sometimes I feel like the left hand doesn't know what the far left hand is doing. But it's amazing the speed with which they've moved. Almost in a blink of an eye, President Biden has launched an explosion of runaway spending, $6 trillion and counting. Proposed the largest tax increase in 50 years. They've announced plans to cut military spending. And they ended construction on the wall, canceled policies that reduced illegal immigration by 90%. And in 5 months, they turned the most secure border in history to the worst border crisis ever. On the foreign stage, they've bent the knee to international bureaucrats, announcing plans to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord and the Iran nuclear deal. And when it comes to our most cherished liberties, they formed a commission to pack the Supreme Court with liberal judges that will erode all the God-given rights enshrined in our Constitution, like the freedom of speech and the right to keep and bear arms. And when it comes to the most vulnerable among us, this administration has also restored funding to Planned Parenthood, and for the first time in 45 years, the president's budget includes direct taxpayer funding of abortion. During the campaign at our national convention, I warned our country that we had two paths before us: the path of freedom and opportunity, or socialism and decline. And as we're seeing right now, the agenda of today's Democratic Party is so radical that it's taking us beyond just the designs of liberalism to an agenda of national decline, abandoning the founding principles and values that have made this country great. Now, against that backdrop of their leftist agenda, we must be the loyal opposition, and we will. But we must also offer the American people a positive American agenda informed by our best traditions and the extraordinary expansion of our movement over the past 4 years. The pillars of that agenda include our party's traditional conservative priorities: maintaining a strong national defense, free market economics, traditional values, and the right to life. On these, we will not waver. There will be no compromise. But a new American agenda informed by the success of the last 4 years must also include new pillars that President Trump brought to the fore as we served. Ideas that fired the imagination of everyday Americans and expanded the reach and appeal of the Republican Party. I believe those must include the following. First, a recognition that border security is national security. Second, that trade must be free and fair and put American workers first. Third, that China is now the greatest threat to our prosperity, security, and values on the face of the earth. And four, that patriotic education is essential to the survival of liberty. And lastly, a recognition that we, the Republican Party, are the last line of defense of the Constitution and our American heritage of freedom. It's true. So first of that new American agenda for our party is border security, and to no less extent national sovereignty. America is the most welcoming nation in the history of the world and has been enriched by immigration throughout our nation's story. My own grandfather immigrated to this country from Ireland, and American families are proud. They're proud of the opportunities that were extended to our families and our heritage. But as President Trump continually warned us, a nation without borders is not a nation. The American people have a right to expect that our borders are secure and our laws are respected. By unwinding policies that had reduced illegal immigration at our southern border by 90%, the Biden administration has unleashed the worst crisis in the history of our southern border. And as a party and as conservatives, we must demand the completion of the border wall, an end to asylum fraud, and a restoration of all the policies that ended illegal immigration on our southern border. The time for talk is over. You all know here in California, the High levels of immigration, legal or illegal, without assimilation is transformative to our communities and our society. Immigration, illegal immigration, reduces jobs and wages for American citizens, weakening the middle class, the foundation of our democracy. That's why, as conservatives, as we rededicate ourselves to border security and make it a priority in our agenda, we must also commit ourselves to support a merit-based immigration program and fix this broken immigration system once and for all. Next, on our American agenda, so we should recognize the trade must be free and fair and put American workers first. Now, for conservatives, a thriving free market is always the goal to which we aspire. But what President Trump helped us see is that sometimes our own good intentions can work against us. China is the perfect example. For decades, China pretended to be a fair and equal trading partner with the world, all the while stealing intellectual property, illegally subsidizing state-sponsored industries, and flooding our markets with cheap, substandard products to destroy American businesses. Meanwhile, our manufacturing base was hollowed out. Many of our citizens were impoverished, and the American working class was gutted. Billions, possibly even trillions of dollars worth of technology and innovation and productivity were stolen. And as we learned in this difficult past year, some of our most critical supply chains were offshored, with ominous consequences for our economic security and the well-being of our people. Free markets depend on consistent rules for all involved. Everybody's got to play by the same rules of the road. We conservatives have always insisted on that here at home, but under the Trump-Pence administration, we applied the principle of free and fair trade to all of our trading partners around the world. I'll never forget the scene in our first year in office. I was watching from afar. You might remember the picture. The president was up in Canada. He was at the G7 meeting, his first one. And everybody up there, I'm told, was expressing their concern about all this talk about America first. They were talking to the president about, well, you can't be raising tariffs. You can't be taking a strong stand against our other countries. We've got to keep trading. And as the story goes, the president looked around the table. President Macron, Prime Minister Trudeau, Chancellor Merkel. And in his own inimicable style, I'm told he said, okay, here's the deal. All 7 of our countries, no tariffs, no trade barriers, no non-tariff barriers. Your move. And suddenly everybody started to ask what time it is. I mean, the truth is, they turned a little green in the gills, by all accounts. What the president laid bare there was that some of our trading partners wanted different rules for us and for American workers, and they were living on themselves. So in the years ahead, let me say emphatically, the Republican Party must continue to support free and fair trade and insist that access to American markets include access to markets of our trading partners. Only then can we keep faith with the American people, American companies, and the American worker. Third, China. Our future agenda for the Republican Party must include a recognition that after years of capitulation by both political parties, that China is now the greatest threat to our prosperity, security, and values. President Donald Trump changed the national consensus on China. Even before the pandemic, our administration adopted a groundbreaking new approach to China. Prior to our administration, you may remember, there was a broad bipartisan consensus that had come together around the goal of helping China reform its economic system in the belief that as they experienced greater economic commerce, that they would open the door to political freedoms and liberties. But we were wrong. China's economy certainly grew over the last 20 years. But as the world has witnessed, whether it be the oppression of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, near genocide, whether it be their military provocations in the Asia Pacific, the bullying of Hong Kong and Tibet, their violation of international agreements, and theft of hard-won technology, or whether it be China's failure to come clean about the threat and the origins of the coronavirus, America knows and the world knows the Chinese Communist Party cannot be trusted. For the first time under our administration, we met their military provocations in the Asia Pacific with the largest increase in military spending since the days of Ronald Reagan. We called out their trade abuses and theft of intellectual property and used tariffs and access to the American economy to bring China to the negotiating table. We spoke out about their human rights abuses in violation of international norms. And the Trump-Pence administration was the first to recognize the truth, that saw communist China for what it was. Not a partner engaged in good faith competition, but a strategic competitor. And going forward, our party and our nation must continue to recognize that the greatest threat we face to our economy and more is the Chinese Communist Party. We must continue to stand up to China to defend our prosperity, security, and values, and the Republican Party must lead the way.